learn to write grants? I've written a few, and it's not always easy. How did you learn that skill? What a great skill to have.
It is a great skill to have. I was associated with someone who was an extraordinarily talented grant proposal writer who helped me learn how to do it and gave me a lot of invaluable advice for which I'm very grateful for forever. And just helped me understand how the process works and how you write it. When I got out, I went to a couple of different training programs that helped me become a better grant writer still. And so I do that. I'm actually kind of in demand. Through my grant writing, I have raised roughly $4.5 million for multiple organizations since I've been out in 2.5 years.
That's incredible. Wow. Why? How come you were interested in learning about grant writing when you were in prison? To what end?
Well, I did it. I actually sold grant writing to people. I did it as a business. I mean, I didn't do it only as a business, but I mean, I think this is one of the things, and I don't know that we explored this very well, but I helped to support my daughter while I was in prison as well. Oh. I paid for her phone. I paid for her computer. I paid for her, a lot of her things over the years. I was not the prime source of support for her. Her mother and her mother's family were, but I did what I could. So I was constantly looking for ways to make money legitimately and legally that I could allow me to be as better able to support my daughter. Oh, that was my prime motivation while I was in prison.
Now, is there a limit to how much someone in prison can make from a legitimate job that's outside of the prison? Is there a cap on that amount of money?
Well, I would say that's probably those are probably gray areas. I would say, Harriet.
Okay.
I mean, you know what I mean? It's like probably in a generally speaking, they frown on people having real jobs and making real money. And again, it's one of those things you'd think they would be supportive of that. Like, why wouldn't you want people to make real money? But like many other you would think situations, that's generally not how they view it. Right. So, yeah.
So you were very fortunate. That I didn't realize that you helped with the expenses, and certainly that made you feel better. And then I'm sure Aaliyah was also pleased that you could do that. Mm-hmm. So it worked both ways. So what are your long-term goals as you come to the 3rd anniversary of your wonderful freedom in December? What do you see up ahead for yourself?
Well, I think I'm not 100% sure. And of course, since I was in prison for 38 years, I operate by the mantra of hope for the best and expect the worst, because that's what you learn in prison. And it's a safe way of approaching life, I think. But it appears that I will probably be off parole in December.
I forgot. I didn't realize you were still on parole. Okay.
I am still on parole. I think I will be off parole in December. It looks like I will. That's what my parole agent is telling me. Mm-hmm. I guess my near-term goals are to continue doing the work that I'm doing to try to make the prison system better for the folks that are still in there. Ultimately, try to make the prison system smaller so there are less folks in there. And continue working to advocate for, restorative justice and ultimately transformative justice. I'd like to see the way that we do justice in this country into something that more resembles actual justice with fairness and equity, and everyone be treated as equal human beings, as opposed to what we have now, which is not that, as I know you're aware. Yeah. So I mean, that's a big part of my short-term goals. I'll be 60 years old. I hope I don't have to work for the rest of my life. I would like to retire at some point. But for the foreseeable future, I suspect I'll be doing that. I would like to write more than I have had the time to. I tell everyone all the time that the only thing I miss about prison is free time, because it's really very little free time out here. Right?
It's very funny. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think so. And the reality is the world out here moves very fast. I'm drawn into like a million directions. I speak at colleges. I was, until the pandemic started, speaking at colleges. I I would like to go back to speaking at colleges at some point when the pandemic is over, hopefully in the not too distant future. I would like to travel. I went to Norway and Finland while I was on parole to tour prisons in Norway and Finland and look at how they do their prison system. I know it was a pretty surprising thing for me. I didn't think that could ever really happen, but it did.
How did that happen?
So I would like to. An organization in California called Impact Justice reached out to me and said, "Would you be interested in going on a tour of the prisons in Finland and Norway, and then speaking to folks afterwards about that?" And I said, "Sure, why not? I'll be happy to do that." Never thinking that it could really happen. Frankly. Again, one of those like, there's no way they can do that. I thought it was illegal for me to have a passport. As it turned out, it's not illegal for me to have a passport. I have a passport now. It is illegal for me to travel outside of the country without telling them and getting permission first while I'm on parole. But
sure.
But I applied for it, and the people up in Sacramento approved it, and there were actually 4 of us, the formerly incarcerated people, were actually on the journey along with a bunch of legislators and activists and people in the prison reform community, and we toured 5 different prisons in Norway and Finland, and it was really quite an eye-opening experience to see prisons where people are treated much more like human beings. It really was. Yeah. So it is doable. It is doable.
Oh, it is absolutely. When did you do that trip?
That would have been late last year, actually. Yeah,
almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And what stood out? Well, you just said it about the treatment of people. I know how different the prisons in Norway are, but was that the most enlightening thing that you took away from what you saw in Norway and Finland?
Well, I mean, I guess maybe like that's sort of like the fundamental thing, but like some of the little things that stick out in my mind, I'll tell you 2 quickly. But one of them is that the people in the prisons there and the people who work in the prisons refer to each other by their first names, like normal people do. Hi, Jim. Hello, Bob. I know, right? Who can imagine that in an American prison?
Never.
Right? Exactly. And the other thing that I think is a little more like a profound and bigger. In Norway and Finland, it is illegal for anyone to publish that someone has been in prison. That is actually considered to be a crime to out someone who was in prison. And I think that's a really remarkable thing when you step back and think about the way we do it in this country, where we try to paint people with the scarlet letter for the rest of their lives. That's and right. Bar them from getting jobs and living in different places and all that. They do keep a central record. And of course, if you were trying to become a cop or a fireman or something like that, they would check. But for the generally speaking, it is completely confidential. And when you're done doing your time, you're done. You go out, you're done.
You're done.
And you are allowed to resume your life and be a human being like everybody else, which I think is a really powerful and remarkable thing.
Yeah, they're very impressive, Norway. Very, very impressive. I've seen some films about their prisons, and they're just so different from ours. So very, very different. Yep. Well, that is a wonderful way to close our final interview on maybe the hope that we will learn from what is working in other countries. There's much that we could learn. That is for sure. It has been so delightful and wonderful to have you on our podcast for 3 segments, and also to have Aaliyah on to tell us about her thoughts and her perspective. I thank you so very, very much for your willingness to do this. And I wish you so much so many good experiences up ahead, good health, everything, long life. You certainly deserve it, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harriet. I've had a great time talking to you, and I appreciate all the good work you're doing. Really
thank you very much. And before we close today, I wanted to tell our listeners a little bit about our next guest, who is Jim McCloskey. He is the founder of Centurion Ministries, the very first Innocence Project possibly in the world, certainly in the United States, because he did this almost 10 years ahead of Barry Scheck and the Innocence Project. So that project is located in Princeton, New Jersey. It was started in the early 80s, and he will be our guest next time. So please tune in to Pursuing Justice. It was wonderful to have Ken and Aaliyah with us today and in the last few weeks, and we hope you'll keep listening. And thanks for listening. Bye-bye from Harriet Hendel and Pursuing Justice.